Hey guys, what's going on? Carter here. Man, I love that background. That is pretty sweet. I really dig that. I picked that up over this weekend. Very cool stuff. Anyways, so this is going to be a first impressions of the ZT0550. You know, a lot of this will run for the 0551 model as well, because I'm really not going to talk blade steel or anything like that, and that's the main difference between the two. I may or may not do a full-on review. This may turn into a review. I don't know. I've only had this since yesterday, and I wasn't planning on doing a follow-up video on it till maybe tomorrow or the next day or who knows when. But I got a few requests from some people that are kind of wanting to pick this up and are on the fence, and they kind of wanted to know my opinion of it, or at least my initial opinion of it. So, yeah, I'll go ahead and talk about... I have actually been through quite a bit with this knife last night. We had a little... intimacy, so to speak. Overall length on this is what, 8.5 inches. We've got a it's listed as a 4.5 inch blade, more like 4.5 inch cutting surface. Looks like 4 3/4 all the way to the start of the handle there. I believe that this is a titanium liner on this side, and it is heavily cut out in there. I took this apart last night and it is skeletonized to the max. I don't know if you can see that in there, but it's literally just like a frame of the steel inside there. G10 handle on this side. Huge, super thick slab of titanium for the lock bar side. Lock bar cutout is on the inside. And from all my research that I've done on when I was doing my little lock bar versus a liner lock debate, all my research that I looked into, it looks like from people that have tested and retested, that it doesn't matter if it's on the inside or outside. What does matter is if the cutouts on the outside, it can cause pocket clip problems, because you've got this kind of ravine right there that gets caught on the pocket clip, whereas this keeps it nice and smooth. So just throwing that out there. I'm not trying to make a point of it per se, but just gonna say it. So yeah, really thick lock bar on there. Uses standoffs, cool pillars. They are black. I think it would have looked nice if they were kind of polished steel. That would have been sweet. Yeah, there's 3 of them, so super secure, very nice construction, flow through design. Stop pin right there, also very big, just like everything. Man, this is it's a chunky monkey. If I can be so bold as to say it's a chunky monkey. It really is. This is a media blasted finish on the titanium. Everything is nice and beveled. Oh, let me throw out fit and finish. You know, obviously excellent. For those nitpickers out there, this liner does have some machining marks. In fact, it's quite similar to an Emerson liner, really. And everyone complains about Emerson's fit and finish, but this looks like the kind of finish that's on their liners is what's on this right here. You can see some machining marks, if my thing would focus. The blade is stonewashed, S35VN, I think I mentioned before. The ergonomics on this baby is rock solid. It's a pleasure. It's a delight. It's very delightful to hold on to. You can really squeeze this thing nicely, and it just feels great. You've got some perfect jimping on the top. This is the kind of jimping that pretty much everybody likes. Not too hard cut, not too soft cut. You know, it caters to 85% of the jimping fans out there. That's a little bit of an issue I'll talk about here in a minute. Came razor sharp. I think this looks like the factory edge. You know, I've been around knives long enough that I can usually tell when it's been sharpened. Feels like a flat grind right here. Got a nice swedge on the top. Comes to a nice point, but still remains fairly thick. Doesn't have Hinderer's Sponto grind that he's famous for. But very nice grind. We've got a little bit of a finger guard here, kind of a safety guard, that if it was just a little bit longer, it would be a flipper. but it's not quite. But it does offer, you know, if this closes, you're pretty much protected for the most part. Carry is very deep, or fairly deep. This is about as deep as I like. The 06 or 05, 60, and 61 have those super deep clips. A lot of people like it. I'm not a big fan of that deep a carry, but that's just me. Has the Hinderer lock stabilizer, of course. It looks very nice, executed very well. I already mentioned in my other video my dislike of the ZT logo. I mean, just in general, I prefer writing on blades to be kept to as a minimum as possible, but that logo is just, it looks like a Fisher-Price toy brand or something. I don't know, just don't like it. It's also on the pocket clip there. One thing I do like is this pocket clip is short, and I like that. One thing I don't like about the Emersons that I've been carrying quite a bit is they have a really long pocket clip, so you have a giant piece of steel hanging out over your pants there. Tip up, tip down, right hand, left hand carry. It'll appease all y'all out there. Everybody will be able to find a way to carry this thing. The jimping. See, I can't even open this thing. Yeah, that's jimping. Anyways, sorry, I'll get to that in a sec. The texturing on the G10 here is very nice. It has kind of a medium texture overall, and then it has these cutouts that just make it super, super grippy. Really nice. And I already mentioned that they have aftermarket scales for it. It's, you know, it's heavy. It is. It's pretty heavy. Even with all the skeletonization, I mean, that lock bar is just, that's a huge chunk of steel. It's a very stout, heavy folder. Definitely great for hard use. Now to, of course, the critique, and that is the detent on this thing. Well, see, I can't even open it now because I've done it enough that my thumb hurts too bad. And I can't, like, I can do it with my left hand just because it's not all raw like my right hand is. Yeah, I don't know if this is a problem with all of these or mine, or if it's a problem and mine's just a particularly bad example, but it's, you know, I don't usually jump on little problems. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, really big lanyard hole right there, huge. I don't usually jump on those little problems, but this is it's ridiculous. I mean, you can't open this damn thing. Ow, like I can't open it, and I spent all last night just going like this, trying to work that detent ball in, opening it, closing it. Finally, I took it apart and tried to relieve some pressure on the lock bar, which worked, but then I got lock rock because the lock bar wasn't engaging far enough. And so there's actually, it's a two-part problem on this particular knife, and until I get more information, I can really only say this particular knife and not the design, but two-part problem. One is a strong detent, and a very strong detent. I mean, it's, you know, you can flick it out, but it's really hard. Like, I can't do it in camera because I can't get enough. You see, I can't even do it on camera. I can't get enough power to do it. I mean, it's insane, but that'd actually be fine if it had a different opening mechanism. What I mean by that is if it had a flipper, and this almost makes me wonder if this was originally designed as a flipper and maybe they scrapped it at the last minute, because it just, I don't see how, unless this is just an individual issue with this knife, I don't see how this would have made it into production after the prototype. So I just got to assume that I've got a particularly bad example, but I would have to imagine that this is prevalent in all these models. But this one is, yeah, it's just almost unusable. And you can kind of do it a few times, but after like 5 times your thumb gets so raw and painful that you just can't push on anymore. Anyways, back to what I was saying. If it was a flipper, like the 05, 60, and 61, it'd be just fine, because that's actually beneficial to have a really strong detent, because once, you know, you build up that kinetic energy, once you break past that detent, it'll just fly open. And I wasn't going to get some examples out here, but like usual, I just jump behind the camera. But my XM18 doesn't have that feature. It has a weak detent, so it doesn't fly open. You got to do wrist flick. If you just flick it like this, it just kind of lazily goes up here. Even super smooth, it just kind of plops over here. If it had a super strong detent, it would just fly open. Or if it had a thumb hole right here, kind of like a strider. And that's because the thumb opening mechanism is the blade stop mechanism. And so that just puts it up really high. And as anybody that has any sort of basic understanding of physics knows, the closer you get to this pivot, the harder it is to move this blade. So right here, the detent's not too bad. Oh yeah, you can just pull it up. It's not too bad. But when you come here, you see, I mean, it's like you got to put a lot of force on it. And so if the opening mechanism was kind of right here, it would be a non-issue. I mean, it would be a strong detent, but it wouldn't be an issue. But this is an issue. I don't know if I can even keep this knife. I want to, and I keep hoping if I just keep breaking it in and breaking it in. I really think the only course of action to fix the problem would be to physically mess with that detent ball, grind it down a little bit, or something else. I'm sure Tough Thumbs could probably help me with that. But I just don't know if breaking it in is ever going to resolve the issue. And you could feel it. If you put your thumb right here and close it, you can feel how much this lock bar goes in. And what makes that detent so strong isn't necessarily the strength of this lock bar. It's the fact that the ratio between the detent ball and the hole it fits into is 100%. So like 100% of that ball goes inside that hole. And I know X-Acto's going to say something dirty about that, and that's fine. That's cool. I appreciate that, man. But yeah, so all of that goes in there. So it just sinks all the way in there. So you're overcoming the whole thing. If it had a smaller hole and only the tip went in the hole, there you go, man. That's a freebie. Then it wouldn't be as big of an issue. It wouldn't be as strong. And so you know, that brings me back to not being sure if this particular example is par for the course on this model, or if I've got a bad one. There, I was finally able to break it. But yeah, that detent is just something else. And it's just kind of, aside from that, using this is just kind of awkward. And pretty much anyone will agree, if they have a flipper design, they'll say it's just kind of awkward using the thumb stops to open it. They use the flipper. And so this is basically a flipper without the flipper, kind of in a way. Which, you know, his XM series comes in this configuration as well. But the detent on those are actually very weak. In fact, a lot of people think they're too weak. And so yeah, so it's not a problem, because those you can just, you know, they just, any sort of pressure they open, but not on this one. So that's my experience with this knife in the first day. Oh, another thing I found out is that it doesn't have a bushing system. It has a traditional male-female system, but it seems like the tolerances on like the stop pin and the standoffs are so precise that you can crank on this all the way and it's still, you know, it doesn't really tighten all that much. Like, you have to really crank on it in order to actually tighten it. So that's cool. They got these tolerances on these parts so perfect to the point where it's really hard to over tighten that pivot. Lock up on here is great. It's actually a little farther than it looks because of how it's beveled on the inside. So it looks about 20%. It's more like 30 or so. And it's actually less than when it came. When it came, it was actually more like 50. But when I reduce kind of the tension on this lock bar, it doesn't go in quite as far, even though there's no blade play. Alright guys, so that's my first look at this knife. I'll keep you updated. I plan to keep carrying this thing, and every night when I sit down and relax, I'm just going to try to break that in. What I've found that usually works for breaking in detents is to just put a little bit of pressure on the lock bar. It just kind of speeds it up, you know, kind of helps to create a little bit of a channel. But this is some hard steel, and I did this for like an hour last night, and it really didn't do anything to help that detent. But yeah, sorry, I'm out of here. You guys have a good evening. I'll talk to you later.